Hello, my name is Abhinanda, and I would be talking about the evolution of foundational LLM models. And you have now had some concepts and how working, what goes inside. Now we are going to look at things very abstractly in this talk. It is just to show you what all kinds of models are there, what has been happening in this field. So it is going to be an overview kind of a talk. So this will be the outline of the talk. First, we will have an introduction of what a foundational model is, and then we will go into how different models have evolved, what kind of architecture they have. Then we will look at some stats and benchmarks, and yeah, that's it. So first, what is a foundational model? I think the best way to introduce is to give you examples. I think most people are already familiar with it. You have been using ChatGPT to paraphrase, to ask open-ended questions, to you have people use it to code web pages. It's true. There are models dedicated to that. So yeah. You can also generate images, which could look real, which could be purely imaginative.
The reason they generate astronauts because the faces are not.
Yeah. But also, how likely is the astronaut to be riding a horse in the desert? So, yeah, this is some of the cool things that you can do with foundational models. And there are many more applications. You can generate videos, you can manipulate robots. They are being used in the medical domain, they are used in drug discovery. So there is like a lot of applications right now. So what distinguish a foundational model from the other kinds of models is that it is trained on a lot of data. And this data could be from multiple sources. It could be with different modalities like text or images, and everything could be used to train things together. For example, if you type in ChatGPT to give you code, it will actually give you code and not just pseudocode, because it had input from both code and data. So the training is done on huge data. That is the first thing. And then it uses a self-supervised laws to train this foundational model. And then you can have all these subtasks or downstream tasks that are adapted to specific tasks. So for example, the ChatGPT itself is one adapted to conversations rather than just basic text task. So there are three factors that are attributed to the success of foundational models. One is the transformer architecture, second is scale, and third is in-context learning or self-supervised training. And we'll look at all three of this in a little bit. Yeah. So the transformer architecture, as the Himanshu already explained, what goes inside. It is the first architecture that removed the need for recurrent or convolutions in a network. So it could just work on attention mechanism, and it did not need other feature grabbing things like convolutions or recurrence. So this is the starting point which made things happen. Then there is also this debate, okay, it could if we didn't have attention, could it also have been done by LSTMs? And the reason for this not being done by LSTMs is just the compute, and there is a debate on it, but most people agree it's just the compute the transformers are just so efficient that we can train such huge models with it. Before transformers, most of the modeling, even sequence modeling, was done with convolutions, and this was also like how big models, deep learning models, came into place with the CNN architecture. But even for images, this is being replaced by transformers. For example, with the VIT architecture, they have been transformers have been adapted to images, and they are done by making small patches of these images and using this as encodings to the transformer architecture. So just the point is that even though a lot of work has been done to increase the efficiency of the model and the generalization capabilities, these are all the papers that are variants of transformers. But in the end, all the variants were either too specific to a case, or they did not generalize. So the vanilla architecture itself was good. And 5 years later, people are still working lots with it. So then we go to the second point, which is the scale. So scale is also, it has two parts associated with it. You can scale up models, and scaling up models means bigger number of parameters. And you can also scale up the data, which is which is used for training the one. So the first paper that started analyzing how the LLM models vary with the size is maybe this. It was like, one seminal paper which did this. And the general trend that was observed just before, any sort of very complicated analysis, was that bigger the model, the better the performance. So these people, they came up with some equations that they could fit how the model scale with the parameter count and the data set size. And these were all exponential. The trends showed that as you move bigger and bigger, the gains are lower. So they are vary about how well it will go, after the point where they could experiment. But they suggest that the larger models will continue to perform better, and they tend to go over the side of bigger models are better than bigger data. But there is competition, of course, from DeepMind, and they came up with some other comparisons. So they varied the sizes of model from 70 million to 16 billion. And also they had data sizes varying from 5 billion to 500 billion tokens. And these scalings provided a little bit of different intuitions also. For example, this model Chinchilla, it was actually performing better than Gopher, but the Gopher was the one which had a bigger size. And this, they attributed it to having more training tokens. And there are some, the deviances from the usual trend. For example, GPT-3, it is a bigger model, but there are other models which perform as well in some tasks, like GLM with 130 billion parameters, which is a smaller model, but it performs better than GPT-3, which has 175 billion parameters. So there are factors like how the pre-training data is and the training strategy is. These things do influence it. So it's not all the time that bigger models perform better. The last factor is the self-supervision loss, which was already explained by Himanshu. And I think we will have more detailed details about the training process of LLMs in the sessions tomorrow. But the main thing is that before this, it was always the deep learning models had supervised training strategies. So there's a picture of a cat, you had the label of a cat, and these were the relationships that was learned. But here, the pre-trained models, so you generally have a pre-trained model and the task-specific model, right? And the pre-trained model is the foundational model. These models are trained with the self-supervised laws. So here you can see an example. The language model is probability. This is the context, and the next word is what is being predicted. And this is all what is asked of the pre-trained model. And when you want to go for, let's say, question answering task, you then modify your laws accordingly. So now we can look at evolution of foundational LLM models. So we are not going to look at other kinds of foundational models like CV and cross modality models, all that. We are just going to focus on LLM models. And for that, I would like to bring up this figure, which is from the paper, a survey on ChatGPT and beyond. And they have been really good at updating this paper. And they have categorized the different architectures. So the models on the same branch have closer relationships. And then the block-like ones are open sourced and the hollow ones are closed source. So you can see that most of the work being done currently is in this branch, which is the decoder only branch. And we have this green one, which is the encoder decoder kind of architecture. There is the pink one, which is almost not there anymore, which is the encoder only branch. And the gray one is, the pre-LLM models. So, these encoder decoder models, there is still some work, they are still promising, and it is being actively explored, but most of it is being done in this. I would also like to comment on this open sourced and closed sourced models in this. You can see that here all models from Meta, that is Facebook. Meta is Meta AI or formerly Facebook, is the one which are open source. So they play a big role in open sourcing the models, and they have been pressurizing other people to also do it. In the earlier times, even GPTs were closed source, but now people are really moving towards more and more open source models. So now we will look at the different categories of LLMs. I think, Himanshu has already explained it, but you had the encoder-only models, which BERT was an example of. So BERT, after the transformer model, they actually, they were putting masked. So masked, what was the name? Masked? Masked language modeling. This is the word used to depict this category of models. So these missing tokens are the ones that are predicted, and there was bidirectional encoding. So this was what enabled BERT to perform better than its predecessors. Then came the decoder, decoder only model, which GPT is an example of. And the auto-regressive, you give everything at once and you get a set of output all at once. And the encoder decoder, of which BART, these figures are actually from the BART paper. And this is a combination of these two architectures, and it has good and bad things from both the places. Yeah. BART. So BART is 2019. Before LLMs, people had maybe 100 categories of words. For the classification task, if you had 100 classes, there were 100 classes, and you use that as your one hot encoding. And then came the static embeddings like word to vec and glove, which started giving some capabilities. There was understanding of what words are more likely to be together, but still this was never updated according to your data set. So once you train it, it was fixed, and there was no more learning done on this. And also you could not input words that doesn't know, so it is limited to the bag of words that it was trained on. But this actually is pre-LLM, and we will look at an example or the most prominent model in this in each of the categories, that is the encoder only, decoder only, and encoder decoder. So an example for the encoder only is BERT, which is bidirectional encoder representation from transformers. And this had state-of-the-art results for many different tasks of NLP. At that time, it was like the superstar. This was actually like really what brought the transformers into like the power of being a large language model. And then I would also say that it is not being used anymore, because these are all discriminative tasks. So it could not answer any open-ended questions. So if you ask the bird to generate something, it had a really hard time. But if you gave it a sentence and you asked it if it was a happy sentence or a sad sentence, that it could do. It could discriminate between things, but it was not a generative model. Then we go look at BART, which is an encoder-decoder model. It came in 2019. And so this can be seen as a generalization attempt for the BERT model. It because there is the encoder and the decoder, you have some generalization capabilities, and yeah, it was opened up text generation and text comprehension. So it could understand or summarize things. For example, this were the tasks that which was used for. Yeah, and I think it also introduced a lot of the how the input can be used. So it introduced some shuffling of input, many mechanisms of how you can change your data, manipulate your data to train better. This is why BERT is also quite significant. And then we go to the last category, which is the decoder only category. And you have so many models here. And but we will look at some only a few significant or some names that you already probably know, which is the GPT family. So these are decoder only models, and the GPTs are actually the foundational models are all trained in a semi-supervised approach. So the unsupervised generative pre-training happens. And then for the fine tuning, maybe you have a discriminative task which you use to the supervised setting of loss. So there has been a lot of models from OpenAI, which are successors of GPT. But we can say that GPT-3 is like the star there, because it was the first model that showed good performance in few short and one-shot tasks. This is actually quite significant, because this is asking a model which has not seen any examples. So usually if you don't show an example of a cat to a model, you don't you have no training samples of a cat in the deep learning model, and if you give at the test time a picture of a cat, it will just predict something that it's not. But in the case of GPT-3, this is where the scale was high enough or large enough that the in-context learning that Himanshu was talking about started to, work properly. And it was considered the best model for few shot learning and no zero shot learning tasks. Should I explain what zero shot and few shot is? Yeah. Okay. The zero shot task is the cat task. You're not giving even one single example of the cat image in the training process, but you ask it, what is this? You show the picture and you ask it, what does this image contain in the testing time? So that means you have not shown even one single example. But few shot learning is when you have maybe some examples, very few compared to the other training samples, but you have still some, very, very few samples. So this is the, this property of in-context learning is really important. And this is what helps LLM to generalize and also work well with the zero-shot task. Yeah, there are also models that are trained with code and instructions. So these are also quite significant in this GPT family. But and also about ChatGPT, which is intended to give you more conversational text. So it is aware of the context and you can interact with it. It has this history of what you have given it so far. And then you have the, more conversational like a response than the GPT-3. So the most successful models for few shot and zero shot are the auto-regressive language models. And this is from the blue part of the tree. If you remember thank you, blue part of the tree. And this paper, this is again from OpenAI. They have made some scaling experiments again to see at what point does this zero shot learning capabilities come. And if you look at this figure, the steeper curves means it is actually better. So this is where zero shot, one shot, few shot, you have one example, you have some examples. So the steeper these curves are, the better they are at these tasks. And obviously the number of parameters as they got higher is when these capabilities were coming. And there is some more details into it about with prompting and without prompting, but we will not get into those details now. There is another category of models by Meta, which is, I think, useful for more people because they are all open source and they are lightweight. So there are, 70 billion parameter variants, and there are 4 sizes from 7 billions to 65 billion. So different sizes in between. And this is good because we as, who don't have as big resources as Google or OpenAI can also try to use these pre-trained models to fine tune to our tasks. We can look at some benchmarks. Actually, I'm going to say that there are pretty good survey papers on these topics. There is this paper, which is a survey of large language models, which organizes them into, public and closed sourced categories. And you have the release time, the compute that you need to train them, and also the details like, what kind of tokens and the number of parameters and the evaluations done on them. There is this other paper which is called a comprehensive survey on pre-trained foundational models. And this is actually more about foundational models than just about LLMs. So you have the summary of all the foundational models, and you can see these are with code links, and I think that's quite useful. This is again from the same paper, which is the downstream task that could be done on that is already like people have released or they are keeping it away, but these are the downstream tasks that are being done on these foundational models. So, ChatGPT, I don't know if this is visible, but yeah, there are so many models. There is video ChatGPT, there is ChatGPT for drugs, the drug discovery. There is DALI is image generation. There is something related to climate. I don't know actually myself what it is about, but that is there. Then we have to look at how to evaluate these big models. And this is actually an ongoing task, and I think it will be still more developments coming. So there is this leaderboard by Luther AI ML Evaluation Harness. And this is maintained by Hugging Face. So they have this different benchmarks on the LLM tasks, and they are constantly updating this. So it is, because these models are doing a lot of things, it is not enough to evaluate them on just one task. And I would like to go to this link because it is just too big to show in a PPT. And this is the holistic evaluation of language model. So they have so many models on different tasks. And this is there are also these many metrics that is being maintained. So this is quite comprehensive, at least up to what we need for now. So these are some of the big. There are just few players because we don't have the compute for it. And yeah, just to again complement Meta, because they have made all their models open source. So we looked at these different categories of language models. The first one was the encoder, decoder, or encoder only slides, where it was the masked language models. They were discriminative, and the task was to predict masked words. And then came the decoder only models, or the autoregressive, with that autoregressive training. And their task was to predict the next word. So this is the current status, actually up to March. But you can see that GPT-3 is not the biggest model. These are sizes of parameters, the non-embedding parameters. And there is the Palm family, which is quite big. But you can see this is the GPT-4 undisclosed, right? This is the expected. We don't know for sure if this is true, but this is the expected trend in the next year or so, because these are all the models that are rumored or announced to be released soon, and they are going to be tremendous. And this is something we are not, we don't have any scaling laws to predict how it will go yet. So yeah, thank you.